Sup, Liron here, and today we're gonna paint this view. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video, and as I mentioned, today we're gonna paint this view right here. It really caught my attention, and I really there's something in the light and shadow here that captured my imagination, and so I wanted to paint it. This is going to be a challenging day because it's super hot, it's super windy. The wind actually made my canvas fly out of its place, so hopefully it will improve, and the paint is going to dry really fast because of the sun. But in any case, this is a part and parcel of painting outside, and I think it's super valuable in any case. So anyway, sit back, relax, enjoy, and let's get started.
Okay, so I'm starting with the drawing. Now, this is running at about double speed or even quadruple speed, I don't remember. And the reason why is because you don't see a lot here, unfortunately. So I kind of am running through this phase. Later on, you will see the details better, and I will slow down just a bit. Maybe it'll be double speed, okay? So what I'm doing here, I think it's still good to mention, is establishing the main largest shapes, because the main thing that turns the painting or the drawing or whatever it is, I think, to interesting is the larger basic shapes, not necessarily the details. The details do add some interest later on. So what's really important here is where the horizon line is, where that big building is, where the tree is, and where the major values are. And depending on the time of day, depending on the different light conditions, these are going to be in different locations. And for example, imagine if the sun would have come from the left. By the way, I'm just trying to show you some interesting angles here. Imagine that the sun would have come from the left, so the left side of the building would be in light, and that those areas will be we will need to leave them lighter, and the right side maybe will be more well shaded. So the light conditions really can influence the how what the large shapes are. So now I'm working on those small windows after I've established the building and the tree's basic location, though I'm not going into too many details there. And just putting in the windows, I've got most of the interesting parts in. Just as a side note, this painting process in general didn't turn out exactly like I wanted it to, but I did learn a lot from it. And looking back at it, it was a few weeks ago, I did improve since, especially with my control of the paint and the colors, but to be fair, the sun was really strong that day, and I will talk about it a little more later on. So now you can see all the details. The bus, there was a bus and a car there. So I'm kind of working really fast, part from memory, part from a photo that I barely managed to take on time. So it's not going to look exactly the same. And this is where some issues can arise. If you don't have a lot of experience with expressing what you see just using paint and brush, then you may run into some difficulties when it comes to when you're not leaving enough details with the pencil, and when you're keeping it kind of light and maybe not as accurate as you could. Now with this car in the back with the popped trunk, I'm really trying to put in everything I'm seeing just to get all of the details in. And I'm almost done with the drawing, and in just a few moments we're going to do a quick recap of what I've done so far, and then we'll move on.
Okay, so let me show you what I've got so far. Here we have the scene. And the bus and the car are no longer there, obviously. Things are moving around really quickly. But I did manage to get them in and take a photo as well. So hopefully I will be able to rely on those sources later on. I also got this little car here for scale, just because I want to show the distance here. There's this little, there's those little shacks or stores there. And I want to show how far away this is compared to that. So you can see this using the cars. Hopefully you can hear me well. There's a lot of traffic. There's a big tree here that will block out this section of the roof. And I initially wanted to end it here, but then I decided to end it all the way to the left. And also there's this small tree here because it's actually really there, and to balance the one on the left. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is start laying in the first wash.
Okay, so just wanted to show you my quick painting setup. I got this easel, it's by US Art Supply, and you can change the angle, which is a huge plus. Now I have this Click and Go Faber-Castell water cup, and I actually put some holes into it and used a wire to hang it on the easel. So that's something that I found really helpful. I didn't find a really good bucket that could hang there very well, so I made the holes myself and then kind of placed a wire through them, and that way I can hang it. So now I'm starting with the first wash, and my main idea here is I want to keep things relatively simple. There's just weird, strange noises from the outside. I want to keep things simple, and so I'm starting with the very muted blue for the sky, but it's very muted, as you can see. And then as I get to the rooftop and the tree there, I'm starting to warm it up and add some yellows and reds, make them more dominant. The crop I'm painting at is a little smaller than the references you see on the left. Okay, it's a little more tightly squeezed. I'm ending my painting on the left with the tree. Now, something that I started doing even more these days is the underpainting, like the very initial wash. When it's a very complex scene, I do a simple underpainting. I don't complicate things too much, because then I find that I lose the freshness of the wash, and things start to create cauliflowers, and because a part dried, and it's just not a good result. So what I'm doing is a large wash. Now, this wash, in terms of color selection, I put a lot of emphasis on the yellows and the reds. And why is that? Because it's so easy to lose them. Black can be dark and dominant. Blue can be dark and dominant, almost black. But with the yellows and reds, you're usually a bit limited. So what you want to do is establish your highlights using an initial wash that's very yellow or red. Okay, and this is why you see the underpainting for the tree is actually yellow or orange almost. So that's just one important point. I do plan on making a video on planning your highlights. I think it is very useful, and I'm going to talk about it later on. So now I'm starting with the second wash, which is essentially the main one. Now here, my trouble with this, and I remember back in, look, first off, I'm working a little too slow, and this is the advantage of me making this video like almost 2 months after filming this, because I have more insights. I'm working ultra slow, especially for this sunny day where everything dries on me, and it's partly due to my working slowly, but also the sunlight was very strong, so I should have chosen a different place to paint. Basically, that's what happens. I should have found a better spot that has no such exaggerated light conditions, but that's my bad. So you will see in just a moment, I will show you the patchiness of it and how the sunlight made everything dry really fast on me, and the disadvantages of working in these kinds of conditions, aside from the fact that I was like super tired because of the sun. I didn't bring water with me because all I have is the water for the watercolor. So that was a big no-no. So if you're painting outside, always make sure you have a bottle of water. But in any case, you can see how this really is patchy. I was starting to talk about the second wash. So another major mistake I see here, aside from working way too slowly and detailed, is that the second wash still establishes the colors. The first one is kind of getting rid of the paper white, establishing some temperatures, but now you don't necessarily want to go super dark with this wash already, because you still don't have the mid values. It's all very light. Everything here is a highlight. Even if it didn't appear like that when I was applying the wash, if you look at it now, everything is a highlight here. There's nothing that's mid value, just the layer that I'm putting now. So if I'm gonna start popping in shadows with this layer and very dark, the contrast may be too punchy and inaccurate, which is again something I used to do a lot in the past. I would make the second wash way too dark, and so I'll get basically a duochrome painting that has like a very light color and then a very dark, and it just wouldn't be a good expression of the scene. So now I kind of fixed that and corrected that, and I'm very careful with the second wash to make sure I don't go too dark. This was really a big issue with me. Another issue that comes up here is that this is a matter of style really, but I'm over mixing. So what you get is not really pure and happy colors, which I like personally and I want to achieve. It's more like muted greens, muted oranges, which can be beautiful, and this still wasn't lost, quote unquote, at this point. But once I put in the paved road, you will see how I really grayed it out, and I think the result is unattractive, not as much as it could have been, at least. So now I'm putting in that left part of the roof. again, everything dried on me. And I'm going to do a quick recap and talk about the sun, basically, and then I'm going to be back with the rest of the process.
So as you can see, I've been struggling quite a bit with this one. And the reason why is that the sunlight is really, really, really strong. And the paint dries really fast. Let me show it to you up close. Hopefully you can see this. So my plan was to do some wet and wet, to do some, make the most out of the wash and create an even wash, at least for the roof of that building, the rooftop and the walls. But that's just impossible. The paint dries really, really fast. So what I'm going to do, I do need to get something to shade my canvas to place above it. But for now, what I'm going to do is just wing it, try to do the best I can. And even if it's a bit fragmented, it's all going to come together nicely as long as the values are on point. The drawing is pretty accurate. So as long as the values are going to be accurate, it's going to be fine and just an interesting result, okay? So you really have to wing it a lot. So here's a close-up look of the fragmentation caused by just the paint drying really fast. But in any case, it's going to be okay. I'll just have to make the best out of it and come back with some shadows, and it's going to hopefully save the day, okay? So I'm going to get started now.
So moving on with the process, I'm starting with the tree. I'm getting it in there, just very messy. I'm not sure if this was a bit too dark to start with, but the thing is, here I start to be at fault because I'm starting to add some very dark colors in just a moment, and it's too much. I should have probably kept the entire tree wash this light just for this step, but then you see I'm starting to kill a lot of highlights that I shouldn't have. And even if you don't see them in the photo reference, or they weren't there when I painted it, I still feel the loss of them because I didn't want to replicate the scene exactly as I saw it. I wanted to add my own flair to it and add some more highlights. So in any case, this is way too dark, in my opinion, for a second wash, unless, again, you can go as dark as you want and you can try and finish the painting in one go, in one wash, and you will have, let's say, a result that's interesting because the values are going to be on point, but the paint is going to mix a bit together. So it's not necessarily going to be the tightest work, which is fine. Again, a stylistic choice. If you look at Stan Miller's tutorials, and he has this portrait that he loves doing, he did like 2 or 3 videos of this same portrait, and he does everything in one go, and the paint doesn't necessarily mix in an ugly way. I mean, it's a beautiful result, and he does everything in one wash, but he does let everything kind of mingle together and mix, and it works fine because some parts are a little dry, so they don't spread out too much. But when I at least want a more accurate result, it's not a good idea for me to be as dark in the second wash. It also throws me off a bit. It confuses me. And especially for these large areas like the one I just filled up. So anyway, you may notice how the quality of this part was just a little lower than the previous ones, and that is because I recorded this in slow-mo, and the slow-mo was set to 720p. I just stretched it over to 1080. So yeah, sorry about that. It will change from and to, back and forth, but for the most part, it's going to be high quality. So now I'm trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do with this shed. There's like a small market thing there, and lots of different sheds that sell clothes and shoes. It's not the fanciest, but it's kind of a simple market, let's say, but I found a lot of interest there. So I started just adding this shadow, and I'm like, oh, this all needs to be darker, so I'm darkening everything. But I'm still trying to figure out what to do with this little these sheds, or the shed area. Aside from the car with the pop trunk that's interesting, I didn't really know how to interpret it, and this is also a lesson in choosing your subject matter. You don't have to paint something that you don't understand. If you're looking at it and you're all confused and you're like, what is that? And it's hard for you to simplify, just don't do it. Choose something simpler to paint. You don't have to go crazy from the beginning. And I think with time you get used to painting certain scenes, portraying certain objects, and then it becomes a little easier regardless of the complexity of the reference. But for me, really, I try to be a little soft on myself, and I really choose carefully, because some scenes just aren't meant to be painted. Some will argue that I'm wrong, and they may be right. If you get the values right and if you get the drawing right, that's fine. But for me, at least, I know it's counterproductive to try and even paint some scenes. So now I'm adding some shadow under the rooftop, and then there's small details there, and I'm already going way too detailed on this part. I should have probably just kept going with the lower part, but I felt like I wanted to get that out of the way. This is what happens when the paintings don't connect for me. Usually I start dealing with minutiae and things that aren't really that important. So whenever I catch myself now doing it, I stop and I force myself to focus again on the larger shapes and on the bigger forms, and to just get rid of the most important things first, because that way it's just easier, and the result is usually better for me. But instead, I'm going with the windows and stuff like that. It's really not that important at this point. So I thought I'd spice things up and show you some of the scene. This was way too fast. I'm sorry about that. I didn't plan for it to be such a brief video. I probably ran. Oh, I know what happened. So I made a small mistake with editing. I wanted to show you some of the scenes, but then I ended up highlighting the entire thing. And doing it like 1.5 doubles, not double, like 1.5 times the speed, and then I ended up speeding up the showing you the scene itself. So sorry about that. I will make sure not to do that next time. So now I'm dealing with the shed, and it's just it was really hard, and the moment you go that dark, it's a big sign that you're maybe exaggerating if you create such a strong contrast. And I looked at the scene and I'm like, there is this contrast, but I was wrong. There isn't. First, I should have started with a lighter wash, kind of indicating the entire shadowy area, maybe some of the contours of people there, but I immediately was tempted to darken things up, make the car pop. Again, like cheap contrast. This is, I'm gonna call this cheap contrast from now on. It's like when you add contrast just for the point of contrast, and it's not done with enough thought and planning. So this is me just trying to achieve cheap contrast. I think I like this term. I'm gonna use it a lot. So yeah, and cheap contrast is never really that good. So what happens is the car pops, sure thing, but the entire thing just doesn't look to my taste. And that's fine. I'm not trying to be too harsh on myself. It's just so fascinating to see this after 2 months. Because I just finished a painting that I recorded the entire process, and I think you'll really love, of a boats and a dock scene based on a pic I took in Eilat in my vacation there. Eilat, and you've probably seen this, some of these, if you've been following me on Instagram, which you should. Eilat is the southernmost city in Israel, and it's also a port city. And it's just beautiful, a really beautiful place with a really crazy mountain ridge next to it, and there's beautiful boats there, and the docks, and it's full of hotels. It's very touristic, so a lot of people here don't necessarily like it, including myself. Sometimes I don't feel like going there, but once in a while it's really good to go there and really take it easy. It's like a simple vacation to take. So I took many pictures there, and one of them I just finished painting, and I think the result is really good, and you'll love it. So it's just, seeing this after a long time really can help seeing the errors in it. But on the other hand, I don't want to discredit myself completely. There's a lot of good stuff here. Here I kind of messed up the negative painting, so I'm wiping it out with a towel. Now, another disadvantage to working this dark is that you can't dab things off really easily. You put the paint on, if it's dark, it's almost permanent. So just I don't want to discredit myself from doing the good things that I did here, because some things are good here. I like the drawing and the composition itself. I think I did a good job. Maybe I would have arranged the bus a little differently, but aside from that, I think that works fine. The car is rather accurate. The building, I think, is portrayed nicely. The shadow and the contrast works well. It's a bit maybe too punchy, but still kind of nice, I would say. I think there are some things that are working here, but it's just there's a lot to correct. You see this part of the wash dried. There's a lot to be said about choosing your conditions and not working where it's ultra sunny and you know, you're gonna get burned and you're gonna faint from the heat, and you will the paint dry really fast. I'm not sure if there's a good solution for shading the easel. I'll need to look into that, like placing something above it, because I'm afraid it will just make it uncomfortable to paint. So I really need to check that. Here's some more of the scene and the cars. This one I think runs at normal speed, not like the previous one. Now, another thing I did here that I don't really do anymore is I really try to mimic the colors that I see. I try to mix something that will resemble them somewhat. And this is the same with the bus. This is a very common bus color here. There's a company called Egged, and they have these kind of green, blue, teal buses. So I don't think it was such a smart decision to mimic this, because it doesn't work really well for me in terms of the colors and the mixes here. So whatever, you know, that again, you have to kind of learn from these things and move on. And I do feel like I moved on significantly. So now I felt like something needed to balance that strong tree on the left. So I added this tree on the right. Now here I'm using a mix. I believe the green here is with phthalo green and some yellow ochre. And on the left, it's a bit more yellow ochre, maybe even indigo. I'm not sure, or maybe just French ultramarine. But this is why they don't have the same green, which really irks me now. I don't know if I don't remember if I didn't notice this, or, you know. Now on the right, there was this weird junkyard with some grass growing, and I didn't know how to approach it. It was a bit of a difficult scene. When you're doing a difficult scene that you don't know how to simplify, I said I would just avoid it, but you could give it a try, but you have to really edit it. You have to really dumb it down. If you can dumb it down, then you could do a good job at it. I should have probably dumbed this one down a lot more. So you could either dumb it down or try and tackle it, or just skip it and find a better scene. You know, with painting outside, I know a lot of people want to start painting outside, and they're scared, or they're just unsure, or maybe they just haven't had the chance to do it yet. Painting outside really is a separate skill, in my opinion. It's much harder to be focused. It's much harder to even control the wash and drawing. You have to take a lot of things into consideration. So if you've been doing it, or if you're just started and the result is terrible, and you compare it to your inside work, you know, your indoors work, not inside work, your indoors work, and you find that there's a big difference between the two in terms of the quality, I would say that really take it easy. You know, don't worry about it too much, because it is a separate skill. Imagine you just start painting now with acrylics, or with, you know, a different medium than what you're used to. Something you're not working with. It's gonna be like starting fresh, and you think that when you're gonna take the watercolor outside and you'll paint, you think that it'll be the same, but it never is. It's so much harder. I wish I could explain it. So that's actually encouraging, because knowing this, you know that it's okay if you didn't get the result you wanted. Here's some close-up view of the. It's not the same sheds. It's the ones a little more to the right. My reference is to the left, but at least it shows you what these look like from up close and give you a better indication of what these look like. So now I'm speeding things up a little bit. This is 1.5 times the original speed. You see I left a very strong highlight on the top of the bus. Again, should have probably killed it a bit. But just to wrap up my point from earlier, give yourself time when it comes to painting outside, because you will improve significantly. You have no idea. Just like when you started painting with watercolor. So don't worry if it doesn't turn out the way you want. There is magic to it. There is freshness to it that once you learn how to utilize, you can improve your results a lot. And I think that many times we work outside and we don't like the result, but then when we bring it inside, we see how colorful it is and how beautiful it is. So you have to be really patient, I find. I'm really learning compassion using painting. It's one of the things, like acceptance with the place I'm at and things like this. You know, it's been a bit of a challenging time for me. And I'm trying to figure out exactly why that is. It's hard to point out. This is really off topic, but I talked about it in other videos of thinking of changing the video frequency, because I feel like I'm not satisfied from things that in the past did satisfy me in regards to YouTube. And you've been, I think it's a good opportunity to also thank you, because you've been super supportive with this whole discussion. And I realize that even if I decrease the consistency, you'll still stick around and watch. And this is really important for me, me. And I will be sure to, if I do decrease it, to focus on what matters, which is the painting processes and some things that will really be good for you and helpful. But it's really been a challenge, and painting really kind of helps with that. It becomes therapy in some way, and it takes away some of the hardships that come with it, because it just puts me in a very focused state. Like today, again, I painted a painting and I was really focused and I feel great. It doesn't even have to do with the result. It's just the fact that I sit down to paint. And I think this is where YouTube kind of took a lot of time from me, and this is why I want to focus more on the painting aspect. I feel like if I don't let go of YouTube for a while, like mentally, I just won't be able to focus 100% on my art. So that's the thing. And I think there are some other things that bug me, but I'm not sure what they are. I still haven't characterized them. And with some internal work, I will find them. Sometimes you just feel down or uninspired, and there's nothing really to do other than stick to your work and see if it goes away. If it doesn't go away for a year, then you're probably doing something wrong. But if you're being disciplined, because I think a lot of freedom, I wrote this down on my writing exercise today, this morning. I write every morning, and I actually wrote it down, that what I want to try and do is see if I can just push through it, and not like push aggressively, but just be disciplined, because I find that really with discipline comes freedom and happiness. Really, it's from that. And I noticed that when I'm less inspired, I'm also less disciplined. So you could say I'm less disciplined because I don't feel the inspiration. But that's like the egg and the chicken kind of riddle. It's like maybe I can become more inspired by being more disciplined. So this is what I try exploring today. I tried exploring it, and I'll try to do it tomorrow as well. Maybe try to feel the way I feel and just do all of the tasks that I planned, which I kind of do anyway, but to tell myself it's going to be okay and keep going. It's just a kind of creative, I think it feels a bit like a creative block, and no matter how much from the outside it may appear like someone's doing good work and they're doing great in terms of how they feel about their work, you never really know. So there's this dissonance, but what I will say is that I know that a lot of things do make me happy, like the painting and the sharing what I'm doing. I do love that, as long as I do that without feeling like I have to, feeling like I must do it. The moment I give that up, then I'm really good to go. This is what happened with Instagram stories. I kind of decreased some of the frequency of the stories, and I feel great, and I don't judge myself because I know I'm going to share whenever I want. So some days I'm going to have 20 stories, another I'm going to have 3, and some days I will have 0. And I feel really good with that, and I don't judge myself on that. With YouTube, though, I really developed the discipline, which I love, but then again, I need to take it back to the other extreme and say, okay, so if once in a while I don't feel like it, it's fine not to release a video. Once a month, if I don't like a certain thing that came out and I have tons of other things to do, then it's fine. I think it's a matter of rebalancing myself and maybe fixing my aims a bit and my goals. So I'm working on that, and I will keep you updated on that. We're really and I just wanted to really say again, thank you so much for your help. It means a lot to me, and it's something that helps me to come to terms with the way I feel. This was a big mistake, by the way, that line there. But in any case, your support really helps, so thank you for that. And we are really near the end of this. Just adding some final touches, aka adding some unnecessary things that I shouldn't have. You really see me struggle to interpret the scene and create my own impression with it. So maybe it was just a really tough choice to begin with. I don't know, but I like the car. Again, I like the left part of the bus and the top part of the bus I'm okay with. I like the structure. Maybe the roof, again, should be a little darker still. But other than that, sometimes you just choose a scene that's now it was a bit too harsh, so I'm kind of dabbing it away. Sometimes you just choose a scene, you have to go with it, figure it out, and see what comes out of it. You learn from everything in any case. So this is it, and I will soon show you the final result. Sorry for that weird cut. I don't even remember why that happened. But in any case, here I'm going to show you the final result, and I really hope you enjoyed this one, and let's wrap it up. Okay, friends, I'm done here, and let me show you the final piece.
So there we have it. I won't lie, this was a very, very challenging scene. And not just the scene itself. The scene was probably not that terrible. The main issue I was dealing with is, first off, there's a really strong wind here. It actually made the entire canvas fall down. The weather, it's super hot. The paint dries really, really fast. But anyway, you got to wing it. You have to deal with these things for the value of actually seeing the reference in front of you. Okay, so what I want to do now is conclude this video. So I want to thank you once again for watching. I hope you enjoyed the new wave of on-location videos. I've been putting a lot of work and effort into these. I've been really enjoying painting these, and I feel like my skill really improved thanks to doing it. And also I feel like my ability to talk to you on camera in public has really improved. In the beginning I would really struggle with it. I would feel like, it's a bit nerve-wracking, all the people around and everything like that. But in any case, now I really don't give a damn. So I really enjoyed this video. Check out the links in the description box below, my Patreon page, my podcast, if you want to hear me talk about many topics and dive deeper into some things that relate to art, the business of art, productivity, etc. Also, just a bunch of cool stuff in the description box below. Be sure to check it out, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.